What up, fam? It's your favorite cousin, your favorite uncle, your favorite nephew, your favorite brother, your favorite father, your best friend's best friend. It's me, Dr. Larry, and welcome to Living For You, the YouTube channel. This is a safe space, a positive place where we come together and we grow together and we communicate in love. Welcome, 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 welcome. Welcome to my faithful subscribers who have been subscribed since day one almost. And to those of you who are new subscribers, welcome to the family. This is a safe place. This is a loving space. You're going to enjoy this place because hopefully you're growing as I'm growing and we're getting so much. For those of you who are new or those of you who are watching in the peripherals, thinking about maybe subscribing, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and subscribe. But just to let you know a little bit about me, I am Dr. Larry Smith. I am a certified life and spiritual coach. And you can actually learn more about that and me and my program and my business, Live For You Coaching, at www.liveforyoucoaching.com. If you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook at Dr. Larry Smith. See what I do on a day-to-day basis. I post things all the time. Inspirational, motivational, coaching, teachings, history, proud things, all kinds of interesting, dynamic things if you follow me on Instagram and on Facebook that you can see. So as I've been doing, really since the beginning of the season of Ayanna Fix My Life Season 8, I've been doing recaps and kind of a coaching perspective of the episode. And so this is a coaching perspective of Season 8, Episode 3 of Ayanna Fix My Life. And of course I have my notes, so if you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my notebook. Because I take notes as I'm watching it a second time. I watch it once for entertainment and for the episode itself to receive from it. But then I also, for my own self, and then I watch it specifically so I can take notes so that I can come and do these recaps and these videos and these coaching perspective videos. Ayanna, as you guys know, is a life coach just like me. So she's been helping people get through these things. And I will say, this is going to be a deeply missed show by me and by a lot of people. I know really specifically in the Black community, but I think in other communities if they watch the show, because Ayanna has opened the doors to people dealing with their stuff, people dealing with their trauma. She's allowed the conversation to be had that it is okay to deal with stuff that you may have to deal with that you've been running away from all your life. And so this show is going to be deeply missed because very few shows on TV have meaning and serve a meaningful purpose. And Ayanna Fix My Life, I think, serves a meaningful purpose to a lot of people. So it's going to be missed. Nevertheless, we get we actually get a returning family, the Giles family. And they have a big family, a lot of siblings. I think it's like maybe 5 or 6 kids. There's the father, the mother, and the grandmother is also there at this time around. So she's included in this discussion because last time we saw her, she was declaring honestly and openly that she did not like one of her grandchildren, which is the youngest one, Jayton, I think, the youngest girl. She ultimately said, I love all my grandchildren. I don't like all of them. And you are one of the ones I don't like. It was kind of like, and that was the end of the last episode with them on it. And it was like, okay, so there's some stuff that needs to be dealt with there. So they were back to deal with those things. Unfortunately, the twins who were there in the previous episode, they didn't show up. So they didn't show up for whatever reason. It could be they didn't want to go through it, do the work, whatever the case may be, they didn't show up. But pretty much everybody else showed up. And Ayanna makes a statement at the beginning that sacred scripture declares that a house divided against itself cannot stand or will fall. And that's just true of anything, in any relationships, in any organization, in any situation. If everybody's fighting amongst each other, there is no solid foundation, and any gust of wind can come in and completely demolish what you got built on this foundation of shakiness and fighting. And so we get, like I said, the Giles family. We get a king who was unthroned. We get a queen who doesn't know where the hell she belongs, even in the picture, even though she's his wife. And we got a lot of things that are there in the family that were left unsaid in the last meeting, and that they still continually don't say in their own day-to-day experiences of one another. So this was their chance to try to fill in that gaps and bring in the family together so that they can kind of move forward in a healthy way. It's a very interesting thing with this family. One of the things that I see was that they were not communicating things as they felt them. They were not talking about their emotions or talking about what they had been through. We found out in the last episode, and they talk about it more in this episode, that several of them have been victims of sexual abuse and have suffered that trauma. But it was just something they didn't talk about out of fear of other things, out of their own projections about what other people would respond to it in a certain way. And so that this family just doesn't seem to talk together. They tend to go off into their own respective corners and then yell at each other about being abandoned. You abandoned me. Well, everybody's abandoning everybody. And Ayanna points that out. She starts the episode with everybody in the family, and they're all part of the heart. Part home is where the heart is, but this heart is a fractured heart. And so she gives them all their pieces to the heart, which is what she got from the letters and from what they said is going on with them. The wife decided she wasn't going to do her homework that she told Ayanna, Miss Ayanna, she was going to do last time. So that's another thing that it's like, and I think a lot of people too, for this matter, when it comes to this show, or even when it comes to just dealing with a life coach. Life coaches, therapists, counselors, any psychologist, anybody you go to for help can only give you tools. But the point of therapy, coaching, psychology, counseling is that you take the tools you're giving and you use them and you implement them and you continue to work and you keep expanding, because it's just only a brief moment you're in that space. And so you cannot be dependent on any savior to always be there to rescue you out of your life's circumstances and your emotional traumas and hurts. You have to be able to be self-driven and save yourself, right? Save yourselves. And so it's interesting because I was actually talking to someone about the ending of Ayanna Fix My Life, and they was like, well, it's gonna be so sad, it's gonna be this. I said, no, I said, Miss Ayanna's done her work. She's done enough of her work in order for us now to know that we have within us, or we have access to us, the tools to be better. So any coach, if you don't do the work, you won't see the benefit of it from just them meetings and just that one interaction with them or those interactions you have with them. You got to be self-driven and save yourself and not wait on some mysterious savior to pull you out and rescue you. Rescue yourselves. And so we get the conversation. We find out that Jordan, who is the youngest, the boy, he sold himself to be there. He said he was there for a check. He wasn't there for the work, wasn't there for the healing. And he's in a very wounded place. And I'll be honest, I coach African-American males between the ages of 18 and 40. And a lot of the younger ones that I come in contact with, and some of the older ones who have been through something but they refuse to face it, who have been through something but they refuse to accept it, who have been through something but refuse to acknowledge even their part and their contributions to what things that they go through on a day-to-day basis and dealing with their mindset, they get defensive. They know everything. You can't tell them nothing. They're not upset. I'm not mad. I have no feelings. I don't care. And Miss Ayanna actually called that out in Jordan. You do care. You saying you don't care is a defense mechanism because you don't want to show your vulnerability. And one of the very first things I tell all my clients is, in order for this process to work, you got to be vulnerable. If you feel like crying, cry. If you feel like yelling, yell. If you feel like screaming, scream. But at the end of the day, open yourself up to vulnerability so that you can allow the work and eventually allow the healings to come in and pull you beyond your trauma so you can live a life that you want to live and not let this be your end-all be-all experience in life. So we note that. We also note that Mr. Mark, his wife, his mom, Miss Dorothy, the grandmom, the only reason why she even had issues with her youngest granddaughter is because she had issues with her son's wife, Jamil, Mr. Mark's wife, Jamil. And part of that experience was, and we found out through the episode, that she had been husbanding, can I use that word? She made her emotional husband her son. So many women do that to their children. I am the oldest boy of 4 kids. I became, in many ways, my mom's emotional support husband. I also became a provider and helped take care of things. I had to get a job and pay bills since I was 14 years old in order to help a functioning adult manage a household. And I know some people say, well, that's great parenting. You're learning a responsible skill and you're being able to grow up. Yes, that is a good skill to teach a kid to get a job and to work. But I wasn't working for what I want. In fact, I bought very little of what I want. I was working to help sustain the household. in an inappropriate, irresponsible relationship. And so it made me feel like I had to take care of my mom. I stuck around in what I consider sometimes a toxic environment because of the fear of having that she wouldn't be able to do it by herself. So I knew exactly what Mr. Mark felt. And then the ironic thing about the situation, because it's kind of similar to mine, is his mom got married to somebody else, and he felt like she left her. She left him. My mom got married multiple times to somebody else, and we became, we grew distant because her time and her energy and everything she was giving when she was single with me and my siblings, she gave to the people she was with. Very interesting that I share that same situation. So I know his feelings. And so he tried to get back at his mom by saying, well, I'm gonna marry this woman and I don't care what you got to say. It was kind of this tit for tat thing. But they created, well, mostly his mom as the adult in that situation, created the toxic environment to where they felt they were needed to depend on each other and take care of each other. And Miss Dorothy should have been a more functioning adult than that. The interesting thing about that is she understood that. It's almost like it got to her that she realized that she depended on her son way more than any child at 8, 9, 10 years old needs to be depended on by a parent. I always tell people when I'm coaching people about marriage or when I'm coaching people about having kids, especially younger people, if you're not ready to have a kid, don't. If you're not adult enough, mature enough to take on all the responsibilities of adulting, don't have a kid, because what you're going to do is you're going to transfer some of that responsibility on that kid, and that kid will grow up to either resent you or be overprotective of you and not be able to function as an adult themselves. And so she was figuring that out, that she had did that, and Iana spoke to her about that. Then we meet a brother who didn't show up for the last episode, Mark Jr. And the reason why I think we didn't meet Mark Jr. is because I feel like Mark Jr. felt as though he wanted to distance himself away from his family. We all, in our families, if we grow up in certain environments, have a sibling, or we might be that sibling, who says, I want no parts of this, I'm different, I'm running away. Really, all he was doing was what his grandmother had did to his father, and what his father had did to him and to everybody else, is just abandoning. If I can't solve it, if it's too tough for me, if the kitchen is too hot, I'm getting out. And that's what he did. But we found out that no matter, even if he distanced himself from what he perceived to be the problem that is his father and the family dynamics, he carried the lessons taught to him by his father that he was taught by his parents into his life. Their mom wasn't there. His dad married kind of weak women like his mom. His dad married a drug addict woman or someone who didn't speak up for themselves like Mr. Mill. And so they couldn't run to their mom, so he ran away from the family. And his sister did that too. So this seems like the patterns are all repetitive patterns that you see over and over and over again. And, I teared up quite a little bit watching some of the things because I realized that these are true issues in a lot of families. This abandonment issue, this neglect issue, this defensiveness against one another. Even though we're playing on the same team, we fight one another as though we're opponents, and we see each other as opponents. One of the most hurtful things that I have ever had to experience in my life that I never publicly said, but this is me publicly saying, is listening when me and my brothers were strained and our relationships were apart, watching them claim somebody else to be their older brother. Watching them claim somebody else to say, my brother, I love you, my brother, and wouldn't even say, I love you to me, your actual brother, So this is a common. So I teared up when I thought that there's families with so much unresolved stuff. This particular family, we find out, like I said, he grew up, Mr. Mark, the dad, in a tough environment. He grew up in the hood. He grew up in the projects. He grew up having to take care of his mom. He grew up having to defend his mom. He turned to a life of crime to even help his mom, hustling and making money as best as he thought he should in order to help his mom. He had to be violent. He grew up in a toxically violent situation, emotionally, mentally, verbally, and physically violent. And that's how he responded to people. And that's how he showed his aggression. I got to prove I'm a man. I got to prove my manhood. That is something, like I said, even with my clients, I have to tell them to break that habit of trying to demonstrate your manhood through machoism and through violence and through aggression. The strongest men are the most quietest. I always refer to Jesus because I think Jesus is a wonderful example of manhood. Jesus never had to fight anybody to prove his masculinity. Jesus had to fight anybody to prove he was a man. That's where the strength was at, you know, in being a man, not necessarily acting like a man, but in being that which you present yourself to be. That's the strength. So none of the men in this family got that. In their upbringing, they learned how to be providers. They learned how to take care of their families. They learned how to be violent. They learned how to be defensive. But none of them learned how to stand in their manhood and in their truth. And it draws into my mind when Ayala did the baking ceremony for Miss Janelle, when she brought the women together. And they didn't speak. They just breathe in and breathe out. They received her energy, her toxic energy, and they released it and put it into her positive energy and strength. You know, back in Africa, pre-colonialization, we had a community. And what they would do several things like that. When a woman was wounded, they would gather her. Women would gather her. The strength, the elders, the strong, the aunties would gather her to impart in her the strength. And it wasn't something that was an option. This was a requirement to go through womanhood. Just like on the other side, a requirement to go through manhood in many of these early Western African tribes, the younger men, when he turned 12, 13, he went stay for a month, for a year or so, around just the men. And they groomed him. And they imparted wisdom in him and imparted the things that he needed for his manhood. The men took ownership of the boys. The women took ownership of the girls. The village took ownership of each other, and they grew. And this is something us people in the Western world who have been colonized, we've lost that sense of being, that sense of community, how we strive and fight for each other. And this massive, this overreaching sense of community is lost even on the bare minimum scale in some communities of the family, when families don't get along and pathological generational hurts continue. And we see this in this family, just passed down from generation to generation to generation, because nobody, when it comes to the men, want to be vulnerable. And nobody, when it comes to the women, want to step up and speak. And this is the sense that kept coming into me, like the women are holding back their voices, and the men are not opening themselves up to have that wisdom, that feminine wisdom imparted in them, and it passes down. And so, like I said, Jordan didn't find the healing in that, because he has to see his parents shift. And once Mr. Mark and Miss Jamil shift, then he's more likely, because he's still young, to where he'll get it. Him and his sister Jayton. But it was just so much. It's such a powerful family portrait of a common issue, or common issues that overlap. And I always say, if there's one issue that goes unresolved, it becomes another issue. And now you got two issues. And then you don't resolve any of those two issues, and then that becomes an issue, and you got three issues. And it just piles up, and you begin to make excuses for not dealing with the first issue, and then make excuses for not dealing with the second issue, and your excuses become an issue. And it begins to be deep. And this is why, one of the main reasons why, as a coach, I decided to focus on trauma. Not just because I had experienced so much trauma myself and have found healing, and I'm on a healing journey with my stuff, but because I know it is a process and an experience that so many people have. This family, the Giles family, is a microcosm of so many families out there in the world. Can some of you relate to their experiences? When you watched that episode, did you relate to some of their experiences? Unresolved issues, anger, abandonment, neglect, defensiveness, a desire to want to be loved, but never learning how to show love, never learning how to receive and accept love in any kind of healthy way. It is such a common experience, and that's why it brought tears to my eyes, because I was like, this is so powerful, because so many people need to be let loose, broken free from their stuff. That's why I wrote my book, The Freedom Prescription, because I feel that there's so many people who They feel the sickness of trauma. They feel the traumatic mind. They live in it. They know it's a problem, but they don't know where to turn to. And so the purpose of the book is to get you at least in the direction of looking for stuff, right? No healing starts unless you look for it, unless you dive into it, unless you decide to do it. Because we can go all day long in our humdrum robotic existence and never actually deal with the stuff. But you got to be open to it. So you'll know it's wrong, but unless you get guidance on where to start. Because my book is just a start. There's other tools and things that can be used. But I wrote it with the intention of it to just be a beginning. A seed, to sort of speak. To be planted in whomever read it. That at some point they start to follow the trails, the water streams, and it can blossom into a tree of strength, trauma-free, and an exciting existence, present tense life. So this episode of Iyanla was great as usual. She speaks directly into what needs to be said. She cuts right through the BS. What we see is, like I said 45 to 50 minutes of a longer process that these people go through. And you can hear how some of them are receptive and not everybody will be. But the goal is to start softly, planting the seeds, doing the work, tilling the garden until it's harvest time. And I can promise you, if you do the work to deal with all of the stuff and confront it and accept it and acknowledge it and work on it, you will reap a bountiful harvest. I promise you. That's all I got to say. I don't want to go too deep into it because I can go deeper into it. It's so much. It's so much. I might watch it again because I feel like it reminded me of why I do what I do, and I learned some tools that I could possibly find useful even in my own healing journey. As I always say, thank you guys for listening to me, subscribing to the channel. If you haven't subscribed, go on and do it. Hit the notification bell so that you know when I post things. I got a lot coming this week. Go and buy the book. It's out on Amazon.com, The Freedom Prescription. It's spelled F-R-E-E-D in parentheses O-M as in Om, God, and RX. So Google that and you can find the book on Amazon. It's just a cheap $12.99, I think $13 with taxes, and you will have something that's a seed that can hopefully plant something in you. And go ahead and follow me on Instagram and on Facebook so that you can keep up with me. And if you want to know more about my business, things that we offer, www.liveforyoucoaching.com is the place to go. And as I always say, I love you, love you, love you, love you all with all my heart. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.